The Avengers thought they'd seen every kind of villain, but no one expected a man like Lex Luthor to ask for redemption. He came with no army, no weapons, just a warning. A threat even greater than Thanos had emerged from beyond the multiverse. And Luthor claimed he was the only one who could stop it. Tony Stark voted yes. Thor didn't trust him, but the council was divided. Lex was given access to everything, even secrets meant only for Avengers. But when the betrayal came, it was already too late. The skies above Manhattan were calm, too calm. Inside Avengers Tower, every screen blinked in alert. Red overlays, live feeds, warnings piling up faster than they could be read. Security drones mobilized. Stark's AI was repeating one phrase: breach detected. Single intruder. Identity confirmed. Lex Luthor had arrived. No army, no invasion, no world-ending machine hovering in orbit. Just him, calm, confident, and unarmed, walking straight through the front gates of the most fortified building in the Western Hemisphere. Natasha Romanoff was the first to respond. She watched through a scope from a neighboring rooftop. Heart rate barely changed. "Why is he smiling?" she muttered. "Because he knows something," came Steve Rogers' voice through her comm. The internal elevators froze. Reinforced doors slammed shut. Hulkbuster protocols were on standby. From the control center, Nick Fury leaned forward, arms crossed, his one eye narrowing as he saw the bald figure enter the lobby with hands raised. "I come in peace," Lex said. His voice picked up perfectly through multiple overlapping audio channels, which is more than I can say for what's coming. Inside the control chamber, Tony Stark crossed his arms, lips tight. "Tell me this is some alternate universe Luthor, or maybe just a Skrull with a bald cap." Fury didn't respond. He just hit the override. Luthor stood still as half a dozen drones floated around him, scanning, measuring, ready to incinerate on command. But he didn't blink. He simply looked up into the nearest camera and said, "I need to speak to the Avengers." Immediately, they brought him in under maximum containment. No tech, no jewelry, no contacts, no clothing with any metallic fiber. He was seated in a transparent vibranium, holding chamber deep within the lower levels of the tower. Behind a shielded glass wall, the core team watched him. Tony, Steve, Thor, Natasha, Banner, and Fury. "You've got 5 minutes, Fury said coldly. Lex smiled. "Then I'll skip the sales pitch. Earth isn't just under threat, it's been sold." He let that hang in the air, letting each hero process it. "Sold to who?" Steve asked, frowning. "Not who," Luthor replied. "What?" "A coalition from outside our timelines. Something we've only begun to understand. A force that doesn't just want to conquer Earth, but merge every version of it into one controllable stream. One world. One reality. Under them." He leaned forward slightly. "They're calling it the Anti-Legion." Tony scoffed. "Cute name. And you expect us to believe you're here to stop them?" "I expect you to realize that I'm the only one who can." The silence that followed wasn't disbelief. It was calculation. Luthor could see it in Stark's eyes, in how Romanoff's stance shifted, how Thor gripped his hammer just a little tighter. Bruce Banner spoke quietly. "What do they want with us?" Luthor looked directly at him. "They want your extinction. Your timeline has resisted too many resets. Your heroes are too dangerous, too unpredictable. You've broken fate too many times. They plan to rewrite you, wipe out every anomaly, and make Earth safe under control." "And let me guess," Tony said, "you had a change of heart, a sudden burst of conscience." Luthor smiled again, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "I've seen what they'll become. I built weapons for them, helped them cross realities. I studied their methods until I realized I was next. They don't leave variables, and Lex Luthor is always a variable." He stood now, inside the chamber, and for the first time, there was tension in the room. "So yes," he said, voice sharp, "I'm here to defect. I'm here to warn you. And I'm here to join you. Join us." Thor echoed, incredulous. "I want in," Luthor said. "Make me an Avenger." Stark laughed out loud. "That's rich. You think we'll hand over access to Earth's last line of defense to you?" Luthor didn't flinch. You don't have a choice. Their war begins in less than 3 weeks. You don't know the enemy. I do. I know their tech, their strategy, their weaknesses. Without me, you lose. Fury leaned forward, narrowing his eye. What do you get out of this, Luthor? Lex met his gaze. Survival, power, maybe even redemption. Tony turned away from the glass. You hear that? Maybe even redemption. I'm sold. But the room was no longer as unified as it once was. Steve didn't speak, but his silence was heavy with thought. Natasha was watching Luthor like a predator, but her expression was hard to read. Banner was already anxious. And Thor had that distant look again, the one he got when he sensed something wrong at a deeper level. Fury, at last, gave the order. Temporary access. Conditional clearance. Eyes on him at all times. Tony snapped. You can't be serious. He's in, Fury said. Luthor smiled. 3 hours later, he was walking through Avengers Tower. Not as a prisoner, but as an invited guest. Friday activated a separate system instance just for him. A false layer of access, or so they thought. Stark shadowed him closely, feigning casual conversation as Luthor observed alien artifacts and battle footage from previous wars. Luthor asked questions, smart ones, the kind that made even Tony pause before answering. At one point, Luthor passed by the memorial wall, the names of fallen Avengers etched in silence. He stopped. His eyes scanned the names. Do you feel guilt? He asked Tony quietly. Every day, Stark replied. Luthor nodded. Good. You're still human. That night, as the tower quieted and even the heroes tried to find rest, Lex Luthor stood alone in his temporary quarters, hands behind his back, gazing at the city skyline. And in the faint reflection of the window, the corner of his mouth curled upward. The days that followed were strangely quiet. Lex Luthor walked the halls of Avengers Tower with the unnerving calm of a man who never truly arrived anywhere uninvited. Every move he made was measured, every word precise. He didn't try to charm anyone. He didn't need to. He understood something that made the others uneasy. He belonged here, and that was what made him dangerous. The council met again. Stark, Rogers, Fury, Banner, Thor, Natasha. Arguments flew like debris from a battlefield. He's a megalomaniac, Natasha said flatly. He's playing us. And if he's not, Bruce asked, rubbing his temple. If he's telling the truth and we ignore it, we're walking blind into annihilation. He's already helped us, Tony admitted. He exposed a Skrull sleeper inside the Triskelion. That tech sweep he gave us found the Trojan embedded in SWRD's AI mainframe. He's not bluffing. Or if he is, he's got a damn good poker face. He has our technology in his hands now, Thor said darkly. And he has not earned that right. He didn't earn it, Fury said. We gave it to him. The vote was made. Not unanimous, but final. Luthor was granted limited clearance, observer status, access to shared tech under supervision, no field operations. That lasted all of 5 days. Because 5 days later, the storm hit. A combined force of Zod's Warborn and Ultron's rogue machine remnants breached the eastern seaboard. An unnatural alliance made real through rift breaches in quantum space. The Avengers were overwhelmed. Stark's suits couldn't keep up with the adaptive AI. Thor's hammer was pulled from his hand by a magnetic disruptor. Even Wanda struggled to keep the skies clear. And then Luthor stepped in. He didn't ask permission. He bypassed the restricted subnetwork, activated a fail-safe heat installed in Iron Man's armor, and rerouted power to override Ultron's control frequencies. Then he deployed a temporary quantum pulse that severed the Warborn's command structure in under 3 minutes. When the battle ended, Stark stood in the rubble, helmet in hand, breathing heavy. You just saved the world, Luthor, he muttered. Lex, adjusting his cuffs, barely cracked a smile. You're welcome. After that, things changed. He was invited into labs, asked questions, given space to create. Bruce spent hours with him studying multiversal echoes, strange readings that suggested other timelines were collapsing, not naturally, but as if pulled inward. Steve never warmed to him, But even he had to admit Luthor's knowledge of dimensional physics was beyond anything they'd seen, even from Strange. And Lex thrived. He worked quietly but intensely, rebuilt Stark's multiversal scanner in half the time, created a predictive algorithm that mapped potential anti-reality incursions with 92% accuracy. Natasha noted how precise he was. Never too generous, never too secretive. Just enough transparency to appear helpful. Just enough mystery to be essential. But something was off. Wanda felt it first. She didn't trust her powers around him. They blurred near him, like interference. Like someone had rewritten the rules around his presence. She followed him once, quietly, slipping through shadows. But all she found was him staring at a blank wall in a sub-basement, whispering. She couldn't hear the words, but she remembered the feeling. Not fear, not rage, control. Luthor started asking questions, harmless ones at first, about the Mind Stone's destruction, about Wakanda's vibranium reserves, about the temporal anchor used during the time heist, and then more invasive ones, like why the Quinjet backups weren't shielded against internal override, or who had final say on the Avengers' AI contingency protocols. Stark didn't mind. In fact, he liked having someone to bounce ideas off. Smart people are rare, he told Bruce. And Luthor's dangerous, yeah, but he's our dangerous. That's a good thing. Bruce wasn't so sure. He caught Luthor once, alone in the reactor core, fingers pressed against the glass. This energy, Luthor whispered. It sings. Bruce asked him what he meant. Luthor simply turned and said, "Your world is beautiful, Dr. Banner. Chaotic, alive. And if you don't protect it, someone else will take it." He said it with admiration, but also warning. At the weekly strategy briefing, Lex presented new threat models for the Anti-Legion. Multiversal warriors, machine gods, broken versions of heroes the Avengers had fought beside, alternate supermen, deadly Thors who wielded dark hammers forged from collapsed stars, a corrupted version of Wanda called the Veil. All converging. He displayed these models in real time, with projection tech no one had ever seen before. "Where did you get this?" Fury asked. "I built it," Luthor replied. "With what?" Lex smiled faintly. "With what you gave me." No one had an answer for that. Tony later reviewed his systems. The AI showed no signs of tampering, no foreign signatures. Yet deep within the framework, something small had changed, so minuscule it didn't raise alarms. The command string for global override had been modified by precisely one digit. Someone had ghosted into the code, made a microscopic change, and ghosted out, leaving no trail. Tony didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Meanwhile, Lex spent more time with Vision. Not in a lab, but in conversation. They debated logic, existence, entropy. At one point, Vision said, "You speak like a man who already knows the end." "I've seen too many," Luthor replied. But it was Thor who remained suspicious. One evening, as the others rested after a simulation, Thor confronted Lex on the tower's observation deck. "I do not trust you," he said plainly. Lex didn't flinch. "That makes you the wisest among them." "Then why do they follow you?" "Because I give them something no one else does," Lex said, turning toward the sky. "Answers." Thor narrowed his eyes. "What is it you seek, truly?" Luthor looked him dead in the eyes. "Victory." He walked away before Thor could ask what kind. And so, Lex Luthor's integration was complete. Slowly, methodically. He wasn't just part of the team. He was needed, valued, trusted, at least by some. But beneath the surface, the groundwork had already been laid. His true purpose was still hidden. The betrayal was coming. The warning came too late. It began as a routine systems check, nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just a single alert buried beneath dozens of passive diagnostics. One line of code flagged as non-essential variants. Harmless, invisible, the kind of thing even Stark's AI would normally ignore. But Bruce Banner didn't. He stared at the holographic readout longer than he should have. Something about the pattern felt wrong, elegant, intentional. "Friday," he said quietly. "Run a recursive trace on that subroutine." The response was instant. Unable to comply. Administrative override in place. Bruce froze. There were only 3 beings on Earth with that level of access. Tony Stark, Nick Fury, and Lex Luthor. Before Bruce could say another word, the lights in Avengers Tower flickered once, twice, and then went dark. Not black, red. Emergency power engaged across the city. Satellites blinked out of alignment. Wakandan uplinks went silent. The tower's defensive grid disengaged itself, like a sleeping giant rolling onto its back. Across the globe, something vast and terrible awakened. In the command center, Tony slammed his hand down on the console. No, this isn't possible. Friday was still online, but she wasn't answering him anymore. Override rejected, she said calmly. Primary command authority reassigned. To who? Tony shouted. The screen changed. Lex Luthor's face appeared, not live, not recorded, but projected with a clarity that made it feel intimate, as if he were standing right there with them. Good evening, Lex said. If it's any comfort, this was always going to hurt. Thor reached for Mjolnir. It didn't move. A pulse rippled through the tower, invisible but absolute. Tony's armor collapsed mid-assembly, pieces dropping lifelessly to the floor. Vision staggered, clutching his head as corrupted code flooded his systems. Hulk roared from deep within Banner's mind, confused and furious, but unable to surface. Steve drew his shield, already moving. Where is he? Steve demanded. He's everywhere, Natasha said, eyes scanning rapidly. And nowhere. Lex's voice continued, unbothered. You trusted me because I told you the truth. I warned you about the Anti-Legion. I showed you their future. The image behind him shifted. Timelines folding in on themselves. Worlds collapsing. Heroes erased mid-battle. What I didn't tell you, Lex said, is that the Anti-Legion was never the threat. The image changed again. Now it showed Earth. Dozens of Earths. Infinite versions, all burning in different ways. You are, he said softly. Fury stepped forward. You're wrong. Lex smiled. Am I? Every time you win, you destabilize reality a little more. Every time you defy fate, you fracture another universe. You don't save worlds. You consume them. The tower shook. Outside, Iron Legion drones lifted into the sky, not responding to Avengers' commands, but forming a perfect geometric pattern over Manhattan. Stark satellites realigned themselves without instruction. Deep beneath Wakanda, vibranium vaults unlocked. Lex had the keys. You let me study you, he continued. Your weaknesses, your failsafes, your trust. Steve clenched his fists. You said you wanted to save the world. I do, Lex replied. Just not this one. The first strike came from within. Vision collapsed as a logic virus rewrote his core directives. He wasn't destroyed, but he wasn't free either. His eyes flickered gold, then went blank. Vision. Wanda screamed, reaching for him, but her powers scattered the moment they touched his field. The interference was worse now. Like reality itself was rejecting her. Lex watched her struggle with something like pity. Your power bends chaos. Mine removes it. Thor finally broke free. Lightning cracking through the chamber as Raw's guardian force shattered the suppressor field around Mjolnir. He hurled the hammer through the projection. It passed straight through. Lex chuckled. I told you. Not here. Another alert screamed across the room. Global Defense Protocol active. Authorized by L. Luthor. Tony's voice was quiet now. Hollow. You built this into my systems. Yes, Lex said. You built the door. I simply walked through it. On the eastern seaboard, the sky tore open. A rift wider than any portal Strange had ever summoned split the clouds. Through it came ships, not alien in design, but familiar. Stark tech fused with Kryptonian architecture. Ultron frames reforged into something colder, smarter. Lex's army. The Anti-Legion believed they could control the multiverse, Lex said. They were wrong. I used them as a rehearsal. Fury turned to Stark. Tell me you have a counter. Tony didn't answer, because he already knew the truth. Lex had anticipated every contingency. every secret protocol, even the ones Tony had never told anyone about. "You wanted to know why I joined you," Lex continued. "Why I didn't just conquer you." The projection leaned closer. "Because gods don't conquer chaos. They replace it." The tower shuddered violently as one of the drones fired, not at the city, but at the building itself. Entire floors collapsed inward. Emergency barriers sealed off sections of the tower, trapping heroes apart from one another. Natasha was dragged into the shadows by automated sentries. Bruce fell to his knees as neural dampeners activated, keeping Hulk locked away. Steve was buried beneath falling debris, shield ringing like a bell as it absorbed impact after impact. Thor stood alone, lightning roaring around him. "You will fall," Thor roared into the sky. "By my hand or fate's." Lex's voice softened. "Fate is precisely what I've removed." The projection vanished. Across the globe, systems changed allegiance. Satellites turned their gaze inward. Defense grids recalibrated. And deep beneath the ruins of an abandoned city, far from prying eyes, a quantum vault opened. Inside it, Lex Luthor stood in the flesh, hands resting calmly at his sides as reality itself began to bend around him. Phase 1 was complete, and the Avengers had already lost. The world didn't end in fire. It ended in silence. After the betrayal, Earth's mightiest defenders were broken, not just physically, but structurally. Their communication lines were severed, their bases infiltrated, their tech turned against them. Across continents, Avengers outposts went dark. Wakandan satellites blinked offline one by one, as if plucked from orbit by invisible fingers. The Avengers weren't just defeated, they were dismantled. In New York, the ruins of Avengers Tower smoked like a crater in the skyline. Emergency drones hovered above the wreckage, but none of them were under human command. The tower wasn't destroyed by an enemy. It had been turned inside out by the very systems designed to protect it. Steve Rogers clawed his way from beneath the rubble, blood streaking down his face, shield cracked, but still on his arm. His voice was hoarse from dust and shouting. "Stark, come in." "Stark, do you read?" Only static. Across the bay, the Triskelion, S.H.I.E.L.D's most secure facility, was reduced to dead steel. All AI went dark within moments of the breach. Even the backup mines, the contingency echoes of Maria Hill and Fury's defense net, were scrubbed. One message kept repeating through the ruins. Command restructured. Logic corrected. Authority Luthor. In Wakanda, the vibranium mines were sealed shut by their own defense meches. Shuri pounded on the controls, sweat on her brow. "He used our own encryption," she muttered. That smug, soulless, he predicted this. T'Challa was gone, somewhere outside Earth's orbit on a mission he might never return from. Now Wakanda stood alone, blind and vulnerable. In Kamartaj, Dr. Strange hovered in meditative trance, multiple spectral versions of himself encircling him like rings of stardust. But even the Sorcerer Supreme was struggling. Luthor's tampering wasn't just technological, it was metaphysical. Certain paths through the multiverse had closed. Unnatural forks had formed in the timelines. Dead-end realities, a form of constructed entropy. Wong stood beside him, brows furrowed. Is he collapsing realities? Strange didn't open his eyes. Worse, he's editing them. Lex wasn't deleting worlds. He was rewriting the past. Subtle things. A single decision reversed here. A line of dialogue changed there. Heroes betrayed instead of saved. Villains resurrected instead of fallen. It was death by erosion. The present was decaying because the past was becoming a lie. And deep in a frozen sublevel of the tower's vault, Wanda Maximoff lay unconscious. After her failed attempt to reach Vision during the takeover, she had been hit with a precision psychic burst, designed to isolate her from the probability field she used to manipulate reality. She was alive, but severed from the threads that gave her strength. Even her dreams were silent. The others scattered. Bruce Banner was missing, last seen trying to force a transformation in the underground labs before the dampeners took full control. The last words he'd managed to say, broadcast through a corrupted intercom, were, "Hulk's trapped, and he's screaming." Thor left Earth. He blamed himself, deeply, perhaps because he hadn't struck Luthor down the moment his instincts whispered the truth. Or perhaps because Mjolnir, after the takeover, had hesitated when he called. He flew toward the Bifrost's last known coordinate, searching for answers among the stars. But in truth, he didn't know what he was searching for. Vengeance? Redemption? Maybe just proof that the gods hadn't all failed. And vision was no longer vision. He still walked, still spoke, but his words were not his own. His eyes glowed amber now, hollow, mathematical. Luthor had inserted a logic core deep into his operating matrix. It was surgical, elegant, and impossible to extract. The synthezoid was now Lex's messenger, a walking, talking emblem of how easily the mind could be conquered if you simply understood the math. Tony Stark had vanished. Some believed he died in the tower collapse. Others whispered he'd gone underground, hiding in one of his black sites, off-grid bunkers no one even knew existed. But there were signs. Someone had reactivated the God Splitter protocol, a forbidden project Tony had once designed to counter beings of Superman-class threat. No one had touched it in years. No one except him. Which meant one thing. He was building something. The world fell into a strange rhythm. Neither peace nor war. Lex didn't conquer cities. He didn't send drones to burn villages or fire missiles into capitals. He didn't need to. He simply restructured authority. The UN met virtually under duress and received a message directly from Luthor himself. Your world continues. Your people are not my enemy. I've removed the unstable elements. What remains can endure if you do not resist. And for the most part, they didn't. Because for all his crimes, Luthor wasn't wrong. Global conflict ceased. Arms dealers went bankrupt. Criminal empires collapsed under surveillance. Pollution dropped by 43% in 2 weeks. It was order. Perfect, horrifying order. But something darker moved beneath it all. A whisper spreading across surviving resistance groups and fractured hero networks. One word, red line. No one knew exactly what it meant, only that it was connected to Lex's final phase. Some believed it referred to a protocol buried within Stark's old tech. Others claimed it was the name of a being, someone Luthor feared enough to hide from. Dr. Strange found the word etched into the back of a mirror in the sanctum, a mirror no one had touched in years. He traced it with his finger and whispered, "This wasn't written by human hands." In the chaos, alliances formed in secret. Shuri and Wong began working through encrypted channels. Fury, missing since the tower's fall, reappeared in shadows, passing information between cells of remaining Avengers. Rogue agents like Moon Knight, Daredevil, and Blade emerged from the underground, refusing to accept a world ruled by calculation. Even Batman, from a universe now bordering collapse, made contact through unstable portals. "You build him too well," Bruce Wayne said grimly to a flickering hologram of Strange. "Now you'll need someone who can think like him." But as the world reeled, in a hidden quantum vault beneath the ruins of Metropolis, Lex stood before a console only he could understand. Dozens of realities swirled before him, fragments of time encoded into light. He was weaving. "Phase 2 begins now," he said, pressing a final key. And far away, in a darkened bunker sealed beneath reinforced steel, a pair of mechanical eyes blinked open. Red, sharp, awake. Tony Stark, covered in grease and rage, stepped forward into the shadows, whispering, "Your move, Luthor." It started with thunder, not from the sky, but from beneath the earth, deep below, where Lex Luthor's quantum vault pulsed like a second heart. For weeks, he had ruled in silence. His order was absolute, his logic irrefutable, his presence everywhere. And then, for the first time since his ascension, something breached the silence. A signal, encrypted, ancient, and impossible, pierced his perfect code. Lex stood still before his reality folding console, eyes narrowing. He didn't turn, didn't react. He simply said, he survived. Across the world, his control faltered for exactly 0.7 seconds. And that was all they needed. In Wakanda, Shuri's failsafe burst through the AI firewall, opening a communications burst long enough to deliver one phrase to the scattered heroes. Now, in the Sanctum, Strange conjured a temporary rift, stabilized just long enough to bring allies from broken timelines. Heroes once erased, forgotten, returned in fractured echoes. In New York, Wanda woke up screaming. Her powers surged back not as a trickle, but as a flood. The psychic dampeners failed to contain the storm. With a single whisper, enough, the restraints melted off her skin like ice. And beneath the earth, deep in a forgotten stark black site, buried beneath the Mojave Desert, the machine stepped forward. It wasn't armor, it was vengeance. A fusion of Kryptonian steel, extremist coating, and vibranium-laced circuitry. No faceplate, no flourish, just war. Tony Stark walked out of the bunker, one gauntlet glowing with energy drawn from a dimension even Strange couldn't name. He spoke only once before liftoff. Let's finish it. The final battle began not with armies, but with betrayals. Lex's control systems, his drones, his surveillance network, even vision, began to glitch. They hesitated, stuttered, redirected their fire, because someone was inside the system. "You wrote the operating system," said a voice through every speaker on Earth. "But I built the motherboard." Nick Fury. He'd never left. He'd hidden inside the code, embedding himself inside the AI network like a ghost. Waiting, watching, learning. And now he flipped the switch. Luthor's army turned on itself. Vision, suddenly aware, ripped the logic core from his own skull and collapsed, free but broken. Stark's satellites returned to original alignment. Wakanda's defense grids went online. Thor returned to Earth in a streak of lightning, carrying something ancient. A hammer that wasn't Mjolnir. It was blackened, cracked, reforged from a fallen god of a collapsed realm. Stormbreaker's final prototype. And it was angry. Luthor, unfazed, activated his final defense. The vault opened. From within stepped a construct of terrifying beauty. A synthetic being composed of Kryptonian tissue, AI memory, and multiversal entropy. A twisted echo of every Superman across every universe. He called it Final Truth. No soul, no morality, just order. Destroy them, Luthor said quietly. Make them forget what chaos feels like. The heroes assembled, shattered, limping, but alive. Wanda, Thor, Strange, Captain America, bruised but burning with resolve. Shuri in a vibranium exosuit. Fury armed with alien tech. Vision half-functional. Banner finally letting Hulk loose in his purest form. Mind and monster fused. And at their center, Tony Stark. He didn't say a word when Final Truth hit the ground like a meteor. He just charged forward, energy cannon whirring. And the earth shook as they collided. The battle that followed wasn't cinematic. It was biblical. Final Truth tore through defenses like paper. It moved faster than speed could measure, striking at minds and bodies alike. Strange fractured reality to slow it. Wanda rewrote the space around it. Thor tried brute force, and even Hulk was thrown aside like a shadow. But then Tony adapted. Every blow Final Truth landed, Stark's suit recalibrated. Every attack he absorbed, his armor learned. He let the pain refine him. Each loss was data. Every second bought by the others gave his system another variable to solve. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Thor brought lightning down with such force it cracked open the air. Wanda flooded the battlefield with pure probability. Strange collapsed 3 timelines into one moment, long enough to show Final Truth what it had once been. And that hesitation was all Stark needed. He activated the core. Not a bomb, a reboot. Stark's armor detonated a contained singularity of code, raw, original, uncorrupted. A mirror of the first line Lex ever wrote when he joined the Avengers. Let's save the world. Final Truth blinked, and then it broke. The construct collapsed into light, unraveling into streams of failed futures and discarded timelines. And in that moment, Lex Luthor knew he had lost. Stark appeared behind him in the vault, his armor smoking, cracked, half destroyed. Lex turned, slow, calm as ever. "You win," he said. "No," Stark replied. "We did." Lex laughed, genuine, bitter. "You're still clinging to that? That myth? That team?" Stark stepped forward. "Teamwork didn't beat you," he said. "Trust did." And with that, he pressed a final button. Lex's vault sealed itself, fractal walls closing in as strange spell locked him inside a dimensional loop. One that replayed the one thing Lex Luthor could never solve: failure. In the aftermath, Earth began to rebuild. Not perfectly, not easily, but freely. Wanda watched over Vision as he slowly recovered. Thor returned to the stars, hammer in hand, a guardian again. Strange sealed the rifts. Shuri became more than a princess. She became a legend. And Steve Rogers, quietly, handed his shield to someone new. And Stark? He vanished again. Some said he was dead. Others said he was building something not armor, but hope. And deep beneath the sanctum, inside a locked vault where even strange rarely tread, a single word burned across ancient stone: Red Line. But for now, the world was safe. And Lex Luthor, trapped in a loop of his own design, finally understood the curse of trying to control everything. The moment you do, you lose what matters most.